My name is Lauren Joy Graves, and I'm with the Olathe Public Library Makerspace. Today, we're going to be learning how to make hand-knitted scarves. Are you ready? For this project, you will need 1 skein of yarn. In this case, we're using the Bernays Softy Chunky, and if you turn it around, it'll give you the yarn's stats, which in this case, it's number 6 chunky. And we have a 3.5 ounce / 100 gram skein. The other thing you're going to need is your arms and a pair of scissors. The first thing that we need to do is set up our yarn so that we can get knitting. In this case, we're going to use 2 strands of yarn from the same ball of yarn. In this case, we're going to find the outside and the inside ends of the yarn. So we're going to take off your little packaging. And then you're going to find the outside piece of yarn. And then we're going to pull out the ball that we find in the middle as well. Aha! Okay, so I found my first strand on the outside of the yarn. And now we're going to pull out from the inside of the yarn the ball on the inside. I'm going to try to find where the end of the string is if I can. And we're going to pull out the inside of the ball to find the end. So this whole ball came out of the middle, and we're looking for the end of the string in here. So you're going to take the inside of the ball from the outside of your skein. You're going to find the end string from the inside ball of yarn, and you're going to pull that, and you're just going to drop it on the floor. So now I have 2 ends of string, and they are both on the floor. And I'm going to take my 2 strands and hold them together as though they were 1 strand. So once I align my 2 strands, I am going to need about 3 feet of tail at the beginning. So for me, I'm just going to measure up to about where my elbow is and do that 3 times to find about 3 feet. So then I'm going to take where I have measured at the 3 feet, and that's going to be the beginning of my stitching. Once you've marked your 3 feet of yarn for the tail, you will want to make a slip knot. In order to do this, you'll fold the 2 strands over your dominant hand, making sure that the tail is on the inside and the working yarn is on the outside. So you'll fold it over your hands like so, and then you're going to pinch all 4 strands together. You're then going to twist around and grab the working yarn and pull it through this hole that you've made so that you're making a knot. And you're going to want to put your hand through this knot that you've just created and tighten it by pulling on the tail and the working end of the yarn. And I'm just pushing it up my arm a little bit because the next thing we're going to do is cast on our stitches. Casting on our stitches is putting on the stitches that are going to make the rest of the scarf. So we're going to use 8 stitches for this. So we're going to cast on 8 stitches, and then we're going to use that as our base to continue on with the rest of the scarf. So in order to cast on 8 stitches, you're going to have to hold the thread in a certain way. In order to start casting on our 8 stitches, we're going to put the working yarn, and the working yarn is the yarn that's attached to the ball, over our index finger, and we're going to hold it here with our middle finger and our pinky, and then you're going to grab the tail end with your middle finger and your pinky, and then you are going to take this end part here and wrap it around your thumb. And you're going to take the index finger of your opposite hand, and you are going to go under this, over the second one, and grab this working yarn to pull through and make a stitch. You'll tighten it up, and move on to the next one. So to show you that again, you put the working yarn through your pointer finger and middle finger. You'll grab a hold with your ring finger and your pinky. You'll grab a hold of the tail, and then you'll use your thumb to wrap around it, and you'll take your index finger here, and you're going to go under this one, over this one, and pull this one through. So we're going to go under, over, and pull through to make a loop, and you'll slide that loop onto your hand, and then you'll tighten it by moving the tail and working ends of your yarn. And again, we're going to do this 8 times to cast on 8 stitches. So over your pointer finger, grabbed by your ring finger and pinky, grab the tail, use your thumb to pull the string in this zigzaggy motion, and then we're going to use our pointer finger to go under, over, and pull through. Under, over, and pull through. Tighten it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gonna continue to do it. And you get the working yarn. And there's going to be 2 strands that are counting as 1. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches that are cast on so far. Under, over, pull through. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seven. Once you have cast on 8 stitches, we will start to actually start knitting our rows. The rows that you use are going to depend on the size of your scarf. In order to make a 2-loop infinity scarf, it's going to be between 26 and 30 rows. For a 1-loop infinity scarf, it's going to be about 14. So what I like to do is start knitting and then measure it up against my neck to make sure that I have the length that I want. And for this case, I think we're probably going to use about 16 rows. Let's see if we're correct. Once you have the 8 rows for your cast-on stitches, you'll begin to start making the scarf rows. In order to do this, you will pull the tail up and out of the way, and you will grab the working yarn with the hand that you have the stitches on, and in my case, it's my dominant hand. You are going to, while holding the working yarn, pull your stitch up and over your hand to create a loop. Remember to grab both pieces and not just one strand because we're stitching with these as one. So you're going to pull it up and over your hand to create a loop. Then you're going to turn that loop towards you, pull your hand through it, and then you're going to tighten it up, which the first one is always pretty tricky. And I'm going to try to make it as tight as possible. And that is so I can try to have a consistent width to my scarf, because you don't want to have one end that's super bulkier or super tighter than the other end. Make sure the tail is out of the way. Tail. And you're going to take the working yarn again in the hand with the cast on stitches, and you're going to pull the yarn up and over to make a loop, pull it towards yourself, stick your hand through, and tighten the yarn. And you're going to continue to do this until all the stitches are going off of this arm and onto this arm, tightening up as you go. So again, we're holding the working yarn in our hand and pulling the stitch off, up and over, twisting it towards ourselves and putting it on our hand while tightening it up there. Working yarn into my hand with the stitches, and I'm going to pull that stitch up and over, twist it towards myself, and tighten. Alrighty, going to keep doing that. So you're going to hold the yarn and the hand with the stitches you're casting off. Turn it towards yourself, put your hand through, and tighten. Hold the working yarn, pull the stitch up and over, turn it towards yourself, and stick it onto your wrist. Tighten. Gonna move this tail out of my way. Grab the working yarn, pull the stitch up and over, turn it towards yourself, put it on your wrist, tighten. One more. Hold the working yarn, pull, turn it towards yourself, pull. So once you have your first row, you are going to then take the stitches from this arm to this arm. You're going to keep this elongated. Don't brush it up towards here. So once again, you're going to hold the working yarn in the hand with the stitches on it, and you're going to go ahead and pull this first loop off and put it on this hand. About 19 rows, and I'm going to have a long single scarf, I think. And now I'm going to teach you how to bind off and then tie off. So first we're going to bind off. In order to bind off our scarf, we're going to knit 2 over to this hand just like we've been doing. All right, so you're going to knit 2, and then you're going to pull this back one up and over your hand to bind it off. So you're going to knit 2, bind 1 off. I'm going to bind 1 off. And you're going to tighten it just a little. You don't want to tighten it too much because you don't want one end of your scarf to be super skinny. So then you're going to knit 1 just like we had before. And we're going to take this back one and pull it over to bind it off. And I'm just letting it drop. All right. Tighten just a little bit, not too much. Then we're going to knit 1. Bind 1 off. Tighten just a little. Knit 1. Bind 1 off. Knit 1. Bind 1 off. Knit 1. Bind 1 off. Alright, so you're going to knit 1 and then bind the last one off. Tighten just a little, and that will leave you here with 1 more around your wrist. Now that you have 1 stitch left on your arm, you can go about 12 inches and cut off the edge to make a tail. And now we can tie everything off. So here's our bound off edge. We have the 1 stitch and we have the tie. Alrighty, so now that you have 1 stitch left and your tail, you're going to go ahead and grab that and pull it through to make a little knot here, and you're going to tie it as tight as you can. And now you have your bound off, tied off edge. So now we have a tail here, and we have a tail way down here. So now we're going to need to connect the scarves together. In order to put our 2 ends of scarves together, you're going to want to make sure the scarf is inside out. And I'm going to say this is my inside. And you're going to fold the ends together. Match them up. Move my scissors out of the way here. And you're going to take that tail end that you just cut off, and you're going to sew the 2 ends of scarf together. My scarf is not exactly the same size on each end, but I'm going to try to match them up there. And I'm going to find this first hole, and you can kind of see it's a sort of a V shape. And I'm going to stick my finger through on one side and find the end on the other. I think I'm actually going to use this end here. So my scarf's not quite even. So I'm going to find that nice hole there, and I'm going to stitch it through. So I'm going to push my tail end through here. Pull tight, holding it together. And then I'm going to find the next hole, my finger, which is right here. Again, since my scarf's not quite even, I'm going to try to find an end that'll make it look good, and I will sew it through. Find the we'll keep going through your whole scarf there. My end is not gonna look super clean, but I think since it's a chunky scarf, hopefully I don't think anyone's gonna see too much of the stitching there. I want to make sure I have this other tail end over there. Depending on the size of your scarf, you might want 1.5 foot instead of just 1 foot in tail length, so you can sew the ends together. When you reach the end of the scarf, you want to pull this end of the scarf through, only about halfway through, and you'll take your end and your pulled through and tie them together to knot this end closed. I'm just gonna double knot to make ultra sure that it doesn't come apart. And you can sort of tuck it in if you want, but now you have this end of the tail and this end of the tail. For me, I don't have that much more left on this end of the scarf, but if you do, you can take all 4 strands and weave them in. At this point, I think I'm just gonna tie them together. I got a bit of a lump on this side, so I'm gonna kind of have it over here. Pulling through to make a knot to make it extra secure. But I'm gonna take this end, weave it through, tie it off over here. And again, you can just cut this here since we've knotted it. Just kind of depends on how much string that you have left. But I'm going to go ahead and weave this through. Gonna make sure that I have the end weaved through over here, just because I feel like that first one didn't do it very well. And then I'm gonna tie it off. Sort of trying to make it match the other end, but so it's secure over there, and I'm just gonna cut it off, and I'm gonna cut it off a little ways so I can actually tuck the strings into the scarf itself, but you can cut it close if you would like. So I'm just gonna weave that through, and now you can turn your scarf inside out, and you have a nice edge here that's not going to come apart. And you have your infinity scarf. Time to wear it.